Hello, everyone. So, hi. So we're sorry about that. We had started the stream earlier for those of you
Just sign into this chat again. Hello. Let's introduce ourselves again, just really briefly. I'm Michelle.
I'm Lexi.
I'm Lillian.
Alrighty, let's jump right into the stream here.
Or actually, we'll just mention that there's a giveaway at the end, so stay tuned for that. And go ahead and ask your question.
So I'm gonna introduce our health insurance again. So health insurance is different from international students compared to Canadian students, and this will be all included in your tuition at the start of September. As for estimate value for last year, it's gonna be $694 for a single person, and if you have a family with you, it's gonna be $1,004. Also, our insurance plan will be covered with dental, medical, eyes, and some consulting service. One thing to remind you of is the last day to change your health plan is going to be the September 18th. And also, if you want to use your health plan in the start of a couple weeks of school, you need to go to a health plan office to check out what you should know do. But don't be afraid of go to a go to the hospital if you have a flu because it will drive your insurance up. One last thing is that when you pick your insurance card, you can also ask for a digital one. So whenever you go to a clinic, you can just show them your digital card, give them your insurance number, and they will make a record for you.
Alright, so when it comes to your health insurance, remember that the documentation is super important. So whether that's your health insurance card or receipts from when you see the doctor, make sure that you keep all of that so that you're able to get as much
a link where you can check out more information about the health plan, so feel free to check that out. Do you guys have any specific questions about health insurance? And we will try our best to answer them. Yeah, can everyone hear us now?
Yeah, so if you guys have any more health insurance questions, if you think of them later on in the stream, you can go ahead and ask them then as well.
Fabi, thank you. Yay, we can talk and people can hear us. That's
right.
Very helpful.
So if that wraps up health insurance, we're going to move on to talking about banking. So some of you have asked in the Facebook group, and if you aren't part of the Facebook when you come to Dal? The answer is yes. So a bank account is pretty necessary, and it's probably going to be one of the first things that you're going to want to see when you get here. Even if you don't really need it as much in the first year, as you go on in your Dal career, you definitely will need a bank account. So you'll need most definitely need a Canadian bank account for that. So it may seem pretty overwhelming. You're going to getting your own bank account for the first time. So what is there to keep in mind? So different banks in Canada have different requirements on age and what documents you need. So some places you need to be 18, some places you need to be 19, maybe you need a parent or guardian if you're under those ages to do it with you. So check that, it'll depend on your individual bank. And also when it comes to the types of documentation they will need. That will also differ between banks, but generally be prepared to provide your passport, your study permit, your letter of acceptance from Dal, your Dal ID, and a Canadian address. So those are some things that they typically ask for. And along with banking is the question of a credit card. So a credit card is not necessary, but it is convenient to have. A lot of students have credit cards just so you don't have to be spending directly out of your bank account all the time. And also, if you have plans later on, maybe to stay in Canada for a couple years, you will need a credit card in order to start building your credit so that you can make bigger purchases such as an apartment or a car later on. So keep that in mind as well if you plan on living in Canada for longer. And one last thing about banking, which I'm sure that many of you are dealing with right now, is international money transfer. So Global Pay is the only option for international money transfer if you're transferring to Dalhousie. So Dalhousie, so say you're paying your tuition, will only accept Global Pay. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, so I guess that's super important information. Another thing I will note is that we actually have the opportunity to have some banks actually come to international orientation, so you don't have to worry about being like really nervous going into a bank to try and start up your bank account. They've agreed to, or some of them have agreed to come and meet with you here. So if you have specific questions for them, you'll have the opportunity to do that during orientation.
Paying my tuition, I can get lots of points to exchange for tickets at Parkland.
Nice. Also, just one note about the credit card, like whether or not to get one. The credit card, you also will need a credit card if you like to make online purchases. So say you're on Amazon or something, which I'm sure that some of you are, super convenient service. You will need a credit card for that. But alternatively, if you're with TD, which I'm with D, they have a special type of debit card called a VISA Debit. So that's just coming out of your checking account, except you are able to spend online with that. So I don't know if other banks have similar things, but as far as I know, the VISA Debit is the only card that you can spend money online directly through your checking account. So the benefit of that is that you don't have to go through the process of applying for a credit card, because oftentimes that can be a lot more convoluted. They'll check your past financial history for that. And if you don't really have one or it's not as good, you may run into some troubles there. So the VISA Debit's a good option for that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty attractive. I personally just go with RBC because my family had set up an account for me when I was a kid. So I've stuck with RBC. It stands for Royal Bank of Canada. And I personally don't have a credit card at the moment, but I use a gift card if I need to. Nice. So any questions about banking?
Yeah. Any questions at all? No question is a dumb question. We know that banks sound like a basic thing, but it can be scary when you're trying to do it yourself.
What exactly is Global Pay, or how does it work? Great question.
So basically, more generally, what Global Pay is, it's a system, I guess you could say, that helps you in transferring money from your home country, regardless of what your currency is, to another country. So in this case, it would be to Canada. And there's like a variety of different ones, but the only one that Dalhousie will accept is Global Pay. It's just for the sake of simplicity. Having different systems could just kind of be a mess to handle for our administration. So that's what Global Pay is.
And we've also provided a link. I see that Dal Student Life has provided a link there. So if you want to check that, then you can find more information. So now we're going to move on to tuition. If no one has any more questions, everyone's favorite topic lately has been, how do I pay tuition? What is it? Like how? Okay, let's start by giving you the basic deadline for fall to pay your tuition is September 18th. If you're having trouble trying to figure out what the dates are for certain payments and things, you can look up something that's known as important dates. And that's going to give you all of the information from when to pay your fees, when's the last date you can drop your classes if you want to drop them, when the last day of fall semester is. Really important page, check that out. In terms of tuition, like I said, 18th, very important. Another function of that you can use to kind of determine an estimate for your tuition is what's known as the tuition calculator. And that's going to be super helpful for those of you who are trying to figure out, like, oh my gosh, like, do I have enough money to pay tuition? So what you need to do is, I believe that Student Life is going to plug in a link there, so it will take you directly to the tuition calculator page. and you plug in new international student under type of student, and that's going to add the differential fee that international students have to pay, so you don't have to worry about adding that again. And I believe you add your faculty, and then it will spit out an estimate of how much your tuition is going to cost. Keep in mind that is an estimate, so it might be higher or lower than that, but there you go, you have an estimate. Dalhousie University as a payee for your Canadian bank account, and then you can transfer the money online. You don't have to come into the university and pay. You've already paid that way. Another way is through international money transfers. As Lexi already talked about, Dalhousie University only accepts global pay. So if you are in your home country, all of your courses are ready to go, and you want to pay your tuition, then you would pay through global pay, and that would be the way that you do it. Keep in mind, if you have any questions about paying tuition or run into any trouble, you can contact student accounts either by phone or through email. So any questions about tuition?
Yeah, go ahead and ask your questions. And also something worth mentioning about the important dates page that Michelle had mentioned earlier. So this page is me as a second or now going into third year student. Like, I still refer to this page all the time. There's like lots of, well, as it's called the important dates, lots of important dates on there. So some deadlines that might be like especially applicable for you guys. So the tuition deadline on September 18th, and also the last day to drop courses. So maybe you get here, you start off a course, it's not really what you expected and you don't like it. There's a certain deadline that you have to drop it before so that you don't have to pay tuition on it. So that's an important deadline to keep in mind.
And
I would say the easiest way to pay a tuition is when you come to Canada, get a Canadian bank card, and you can just go to the bank to check out your tuition, how much is it from the online, and give the bank clerk your banking number and type in with the amount of money you want to pay, and then it's just gonna directly goes to the student account at Dal.
for sure, and I know that Dalhousie International Advisor has already answered this, but I guess we can elaborate about when to start paying tuition. So you can technically pay your tuition now through global pay if you're in your home country. However, I would highly recommend that you wait until you get here and start classes, so you can actually confirm that the classes that you have registered for are the ones you want to take. It can really be a pain if you get here and realize, oh, this program is not for me, or oh, there are a few courses, and then all of a sudden your tuition gets adjusted. So I would advise to wait, but you can pay global pay now.
Yeah, so really how the tuition payment deadline works. So the deadline is September 18th. As long as you pay before then, so if you're paying on September 17th at 11:55 p.m., you're still good. So it's not like sooner the better. It's as long as you're done by the deadline. So whether you want to wait, as Michelle suggested, until you get here, kind of see what the situation is, or you want to pay it earlier, it's all the same thing, as long as you pay before the 18th.
Yeah. Do you want to answer anything?
Pay a bit now and then pay the other bit in September. Yeah, you can do that as well. Can you open a Canadian bank account from outside of Canada? Okay. So our advisors will help answer that in the chat. Yeah. So if you have any more questions about banking, or you can hang on to them if you forget about them until later, that's fine as well. And we'll move on to talking about cell phones now.
Another popular and important topic.
Yes. Okay, so cell phone is also something that you're probably going to be wanting to take care of pretty soon in Canada. Each provider is going to have different requirements in terms of age. So whether it's 18, 19, or maybe if you're below that age, you need a parent or guardian, or in terms of what documentation you need. But generally for documentation, be prepared to provide 2 pieces of ID plus your provincial ID. So that'll kind of depend, but you'll have to check that out. And some things to keep in mind when it comes to choosing your provider. So first thing you want to be looking at is your contract. So what is your contract? For cell phone contracts, it's, I guess, kind of different from other types of contracts that you may have experienced before. But the cell phone contracts are based on a number of months. So some contracts are active for 1 year, some are for 2 years. And once you sign this, it basically says that your phone service has to come through this provider for that amount of time. So say it's, so keep that in mind before you sign it. For example, if you don't plan on staying in Canada for a full 2 years, it's probably not the best idea to sign a 2-year phone contract. So like that's the kind of thing you want to keep in mind in that. And going deeper into the contract, there's probably going to be some terms detailing, for example, what happens if you break your phone. So this is pretty important, especially for international students if you do need to maintain constant contact with your folks at home, or they want you to be always available in case there's some urgent emergency or anything like that. If you break your phone, some providers will also offer a substitute phone while they're fixing it. So whether that takes 2 weeks, 1 week, you will have another phone that you can call through your same number during that time. Meanwhile, some providers don't have this at all, and you might just be completely radio silent for however long it takes. Some providers will say, we will fix your phone within a certain time frame, so maybe that's 2 weeks. Maybe some providers don't have a time frame at all, and it might take a month. So you want to make sure that whatever their policy on that fits with what you need. So maybe you don't really urgently need your phone all the time, and it's fine that your provider doesn't have you covered in case your phone breaks. So just keep in mind what your plan is on that. And another thing you want to keep in mind, especially for international students, is long distance fees. So you want to check out how much your provider charges for long distance fees, whether that's compatible with your budget. And also just another note on long distance fees, an alternative to paying for that, which can often get quite pricey, you can actually call internationally through the internet, which I'm sure that a lot of you are aware of and maybe you use these already. But say you use WeChat or Line, you can call people in other countries just over the internet, and it's usually cheaper than calling through long distance. And one last thing that you want to keep in mind is what your provider's policy is on suspending your plan. So as international students, maybe you'll be going home during Christmas break for a month, for the summer for a couple months, and you want to make sure that your phone plan can accommodate that. So what suspending your plan means is that when you go home for those couple months, they're able to just put your plan on hold, and then when you come back, they can just start it right back up again, no problem. And your contract is also just on hold for that time, so you don't have to pay for it, but you won't have service to your phone. So you want to make sure that your provider is able to do that, versus you having to pay for the 4 months while you're home for the summer, and that's just kind of a waste of money. So
yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, so you want to check out what their policy is on that. So those are just some things to keep in mind. Do you guys have any other questions about cell phones? Go ahead and ask them. Lillian, what was your experience with getting a cell phone?
I use Virgin, and I got a contract phone. It's like $50 per month, and since I'm not going home, so I don't need any expense. But I heard from my friend that you can pay like $5 or $15 to keep your phone number and keep the same plan until you come back to Canada.
Mm-hmm. And I'll also add, like we mentioned for banks, ask them more specific questions there as well. So don't worry about that.
All right. Then let's talk about some fun things to do in Halifax. But before that, we would love to hear what you guys like to do in your city. Please let us know in the chat.
Yeah, what do you guys like to do, and what do you guys think you might do when you get to Halifax? Just to hang out and stuff.
Yeah, so is your city like a more summer city? Is it a more like winter city? Is when all the action is? Like, let us know. Definitely want to find out.
And what's your entertainment things are? Get
You
some
just-
lobster. That's
Oh.
nice. You can get a lot in Halifax.
Wow.
You
As
will
if
get
I
that.
haven't heard that one before.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just funny story. When I was telling my friends in Ontario that I was coming to Nova Scotia, all of them were like, "Bring me back a lobster." So it's kind of an old wound for me. Anyway,
Alright, let's talk about some things I like to do in Halifax. So personally, I go to some day trips with my friend to have a picnic at Point Pleasant Park. And you can also take some boardwalk at the waterfront to enjoy the harbor. And also there is a farmer's market which open on Saturday morning. You can go and have some fresh vegetable, fruits, and have some snack over there. And how about you? What do you like to do, Maxi?
so right now it is the glorious Halifax summer. So like the city is always super like bustling, and like Lillian said, I also love going downtown for walks. There's like a lot to see. There's like the public gardens. And also we do have a video where we take you through a tour of downtown with us. So it's a lot of fun. Make sure that you check that out. But yeah, right now there's also lots of great nightlife, great patios. So you can like sit outside for like hours on end, just like with your friends, with some drinks, some great food. So that's always a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I'll mention one thing before I get into my stuff about the video. Apparently, in the public gardens, there's this place I like to sit at, and I've been calling it a willow tree for my entire life. It is not a willow tree. Spoiler alert, my life is a lie. I really like to do the same things as you guys. I like to walk on the harbor front. There's something so nice about being by the harbor, by the sea. I also like talking with my friends in the gardens and just hanging out downtown. One of the loveliest things about Halifax is that you can walk pretty much anywhere, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But I also like reading in the gardens and just going for walks in Point Pleasant Park.
And Fabi, how far is Point Pleasant Park from Howe? It's about a 15 to 20-minute bus ride. If you're walking there, maybe 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah,
So pretty close.
do check it out. It's really nice.
And there are also some interesting events going on. Like now there is a jazz festival at the waterfront. In later October, there will be a October Art Festival where different artists will come to Halifax and present you with different light shows in church or on the street or sometimes just in a cottage. You can check it out then. And another event going on in our campus is Dal After Dark. Have you heard about it?
Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, I've heard of Dal After Dark. So one of the best things about orientation is you'll hear a lot about Dal After Dark, and it is run by Student Health and Wellness, I believe, and they do weekend activities. Board game nights, paint nights, sometimes here at the International Center. That's pretty cool. They do movie nights too. So they have their own Facebook page, and they'll link you to that, and you can check it out. So that's really nice thing to get involved in on campus.
Yeah, and the entertainment thing we would like to do, especially for girls, is shopping. There are lots of nice shops in downtown like Parkland, and the further one we will have a Halifax shopping center. There are lots of national brands and some Canadian brands like Roots, etc. And you can find your clothing throughout the whole year over there.
Yeah.
And also another place you can go is Halifax Central Library. It will be a nice place for you to study, and you can find volunteer opportunities there, and sometimes just grab a coffee and chat with a friend.
Yeah, and also more about like shopping, and I guess also food as well. Halifax has like tons of really local places. So for shops, they have some really cool thrift shops that have been owned by families for many years, and like cool little boutiques as well. So those are a lot of fun.
Any questions on what to do in Halifax?
Yeah. If you guys want to know like what it's like on the street here, like what kind of other things we do maybe besides downtown, go ahead and ask.
And we've also posted that link for Dal After Dark, so you can see kind of some of the events that they like to do. And it's, like I said, it's usually on the weekend.
All right. So now we're going to talk about food. So this is definitely something that you want to start planning for. A lot of times when we get caught up in, all that's happening around campus, all of your classes, you maybe forget. I'm sure that we've all done it, as horrible as it is. You kind of just go through a day. It's all such a rush. You're super busy. You get to the end of the day, realize you've eaten one meal. So it happens, but it's also something you want to be considering to prevent that from happening. So in terms of food on campus, there's tons of great options, super convenient. Like, for example, the shops in the Killam are open pretty late. So if you're studying late on campus, there's that. And we actually have a video where we take you on a tour of the campus food options. And that's super helpful. We show you where they are, what they kind of look like. So check out that video.
What? Another video.
Yeah. So when it comes to food, it really kind of depends on the person. Some people might buy all of their food on campus. Some people like to bring food. So it really depends. And there's lots of different ways to do it. How do you like to deal with food, the food situation?
Food situation. I tend to bring my food from home. So both snacks and meals. And the nice thing about campus is that there are microwaves very close by, like wherever you are. So in terms of like hot meals, I don't have a problem because I can just go and heat it up, and just as long as you clean up your mess after you use it, then people are usually pretty nice about that. So I tend to bring my own food and my own kind of hot drinks or water. What about you, Lillian?
I pretty much do the same thing. I bring lunch on my own for most of the time. But during midterm and final season, it's getting busy. So I'm just gonna go to Tim Hortons with my friend, grab a coffee and some wraps or burgers.
Did you say Tim Hortons?
Yes.
What is that?
It's a Canadian brand for some snacky. It's mostly like a coffee shop. You can have some snacks or just some soup. Nice to fill your tummy.
Yeah. So when it comes to food, so I'm kind of like Michelle and Lillian here. I like to bring my food. Most of the time I'm bringing like snacks. Sometimes I'll bring a meal if I'm going to be on campus for longer. So when it comes to bringing food off campus, you have to buy that food somewhere. So that'll be at the grocery store. And the grocery stores in Halifax usually do their student discount days on Tuesdays. So depending on the grocery store, if you go in on Tuesday, you show them your Dal card, you can get maybe 10 or 15% off. So that is super convenient, and make sure that you look out for that. And there's also tons of different food events, like diverse food events around Halifax and around campus. Do you know anything about those, Lillian?
Yeah, sure. Like for our Chinese Student and Scholars Association, we hold a spring festival every year, where you can come and watch shows and enjoy some delicious food. And also, if you are in the commerce or management program, you can come to International Student Successful Program. Maybe on Tuesday or Thursday, we will provide sessions. You can have some sushi there, and there are some professors to give you study tips and like some volunteering opportunities and some of the others. Like people help you with your resume, cover letter, etc. And also there is a Super Eat app on campus. Sometimes you study very late in the library or just at your home. You can buy food from there to deliver to your house. And for some Chinese restaurants like Rivi's dumplings and some other things, you can check it out.
Nice. So I'll talk about some events off campus. I think we tend to have a lot of culturally diverse food here in Halifax. A couple of festivals to highlight would be the Lebanese Festival. That's always really popular, and the Greek Festival as well. And I think Ribfest just ended as well. So a lot of people come out to those events, and there are a lot of restaurants off campus.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of great food events that you definitely want to make sure that you check out. So if you have any other questions about food, go ahead and ask them. So that could be how we pack our lunches, what kind of things we bring. If you're curious about any of those, go ahead and ask.
And one thing I need to mention is that every Monday evening, International Center puts on dinners for international students to come chat with each other and share some fun things about culture and life.
All right. Okay. Well, Michelle, do you want to take it on?
Yeah, I'm gonna cruise right along here, and we're gonna talk about another important topic, which is transportation and weather. So there are a few ways to get around Halifax, but we want to hear from you first. How do you get around your city? What kind of transportation do you like to use, and what do you plan on using when you get to Halifax, if you've thought about that? What kind of transportation do you like to use, Lillian?
Well, since Halifax is a pretty walkable city, most time I just take a walk if I'm not in a hurry and within 10 minutes more. But during winter, I really don't want to go out. Like,
Yeah,
stay
winter
home
can
on
be
the-
challenging.
So I'm just taking the bus every single day. How about you, Alexi?
I also like to take the bus, and same, also a mix of walking. So yeah, everything. Most of the Halifax downtown is within like a 20 to 30-minute walk, and it's a nice place to walk. Like the streets are around in.
Yeah, so I am the same way. I like to walk and take the bus, like a little mixture of both. What's a little different for me is that I actually live in a town just outside the city. It's about 30 minutes away, so I tend to use the bus a little bit more. And an attractive part about being a Dal student and using the bus is when you get your Dal card, you can also get what's known as a UPass or a bus pass. And that's a little sticker that goes right on the front of your Dal card, and that's going to cover all of your transit tickets for the entire year. So all you have to do is show your Dal card to the bus driver, and then you can get on whatever bus you want to take, which is really, really convenient, especially during the winter when you don't want to walk in the snow and the rain. So another thing I wanted to let you guys know about is during international orientation, we're also going to have special lines for you guys to go in and get your Dal card and your bus pass at the Dal card office, which is in the back of the house. A reminder of this during orientation, but it's just something to keep in mind. And yeah, it is really convenient. Another way is to take a bike. I noticed that in our Facebook group chat, we've been talking a lot about bikes and how to get around Halifax with a bike.
And also, Joseph is plans on using a bicycle or walking when he gets here. So.
Excellent. So there are a few bike lanes around town and more coming in, which is really nice to see. There are lots of places where you can park your bike and lock it on campus, and more coming in there too, I believe. An excellent resource is Dal's Bike Center, as I already talked about in the chat. They allow you to rent bikes for free because you're a Dal student, and they'll provide you with a lock as well. And they just have some really great expertise on buying and renting bikes in Halifax, so check them out. Finally, the last two is traveling by car. Now, when you're a student and you're traveling by car, you have to worry about things like parking and buying parking passes and all the things associated with buying a car. There is also a car share available on campus, so if you want to use a car and don't want to have to buy one, that might be an interesting opportunity to explore, and it is quicker than getting around by bus. And finally, you can use the ferry to get across the harbor to a city known as Dartmouth. So Halifax is kind of separated by this harbor, and then across you have Dartmouth. So if you take this ferry, all you have to do is show your Dal card again, because it is part of Metro Transit. You'll get into this waiting area, and then you'll board this boat, and it will take you across to downtown Dartmouth if you want to explore a little thing down there, which is really, really convenient. So that's all for transportation. And one little note we wanted to mention is you want to dress appropriately for the weather. We created this sort of video outlining kind of the clothes you want to wear according to each season. Kind of silly, kind of funny. So you should check that out when that's posted. But just make sure that you're dressing appropriate for the weather.
So we do have a couple questions here. So cabs, yes, they are expensive. Wouldn't really recommend using a cab unless you're really desperate, stranded in the middle of nowhere and it's raining really hard or something like that. But generally, like, I would not rely on cabs. They are expensive.
And I will also say we've had questions about this a little bit before, but there is no Uber or Lyft in Halifax.
And also, so about how the traffic is. So the traffic, it seems to alternate between either completely gridlocked, pretty much, or like kind of pretty much empty. So like that's kind of the two alternatives. Yeah, the traffic is not really that great. If you are like kind of looking into maybe thinking about getting a car, keep that in mind. If you want to spend most of your time between downtown Halifax and campus, I would not say the car is the best option, just because when you're downtown, there's quite a lack of parking. So most of the time you're going to end up parking somewhere and walking anyway. And if you're on campus, I would say kind of the same thing. You're going to have to park and walk anyway. So car maybe is not the best option if you plan on staying within the downtown Halifax area.
And there's like, we end up taking this bus called the One in the downtown video that we posted. And it didn't take us very long to get downtown. It took us like, what, 5 minutes? So something to keep in mind.
And for Fabi's question, do bus drive the whole night? Most of bus not, like some just end at 12. So if you want to go out late, and just go home early a little bit.
Just check the bus schedule before you go out to make sure what kind of arrangements you want to make. Party safe.
Where do we get our hair done? Okay. You guys want to?
Well, thanks for asking. Just at a salon. There are lots of salons.
So I'm going to go ahead and recommend them because they've always done a great job with my hair and it's not expensive at all. So Top Cut Salon, it's downtown. There's a Cora's there. Cora's is a breakfast place. There's a Cora's there. It's like a little plaza. It's called Top Cuts. They have a $20 flat rate for all students. That's where I've been going to get my hair, and like I'm usually pretty picky because like if you mess up short hair, it's really obvious. So they've always done a great job with my hair, and that's where I've always gone.
And as for me, I just got my haircut a couple of days ago. It's in front of the superstore. You will see a very big advertisement over there, but I forget the name of it. You'll figure it out then, and during school season, they're hiring lots of students, and then the price is pretty affordable.
And if you're looking for an extremely affordable haircut, there is an actual kind of barbershop / hair cutting studio right next to the bookstore. The name escapes me, but the prices are very reasonable. So check that out if you just want a very simple cut.
Yeah, although I've had a friend go there and they kind of messed up his hair a little bit. So,
so beware, I guess.
Beware, but also beware with all hair places, really.
Yeah, for sure.
How far is the closest supermarket?
Man.
So I think the closest one is going to be on Quinpool, which is about a 15-minute walk from campus.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so it's not far at all. It's completely walkable. I live about 5 minutes from campus. I walk to the grocery store once a week. Once you get used to it, it's really not even a walk at all. Like you just kind of do it. It's like no problem. It's enjoyable. So
very good. Well, if there aren't any questions, then I guess we can move on to
textbooks. Yeah. So we're going to move on to textbooks now. I've seen that a lot of you have been asking about textbooks in the chat as well. So a couple things to consider. So we do have a program here called Books in Res. And if you tuned into our earlier webinar our earlier video about residence, you will have heard about this already. So Books in Res runs through our bookstore here, and they're able to deliver a variety of things. So that includes stuff for your dorm, maybe shower supplies or stuff to organize your desk. And they're also able to But just a note for international students, if you do plan on using books and res, since most of you will probably be here earlier for the international student orientation, you need to let books and res know that you will be arriving earlier so that they can make sure to bring the stuff to your room in time. So when it comes to textbooks, in general, there's kind of a lot of ways that you can approach it. So you can buy your books new from the bookstore. Some people like to purchase them secondhand. Sometimes you can find pieces of textbooks online. You can also borrow them from the Killam, our library. You can borrow them for free. So there's a lot of different options, and everyone kind of has their own way of doing it. How do you like to do it, Michelle?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of kind of starting my book search right now. I tend to do kind of a combination of methods. So if it's a brand new textbook and it requires one of those horrible course codes that you have to buy for like participation or like an online lab, then I will buy it at the bookstore. However, I tend to do a combination of Amazon and secondhand at any of the Facebook groups that sell and exchange textbooks. So that's what I like to do.
Well, as for me, I usually ask the student from last year to see what kind of book they use. But I still wait for a week also to see what the professor's requirements are, because sometimes the version of the book gets updated, or sometimes they ask you for a course code which you can only use once. So just for safe, I would wait for a week to see.
Yeah. So I would agree with Michelle and Lillian on this. It's usually good to kind of wait until you get here, meet your professors. They'll probably talk about what their expectations are on the textbook. So it kind of differs. Some professors are very reliant on the textbook and they kind of go through the textbook like with their course, and some might barely use the textbook at all. So even though it's listed in the syllabus, doesn't necessarily mean that all professors use it the same way. So it's kind of a good idea to wait until you get here and see what the situation is with your professors. And what Michelle had mentioned about Facebook groups for exchanging secondhand textbooks. So there's lots of Dalhousie like textbook exchange groups where you can get textbooks from previous students, and those are usually at quite a discount. So those are great. Also the sub, or our DSU, our Dal Student Union, also has a site for exchanging textbooks there. And just one last note on these wretched course codes that Michelle and Lillian have mentioned. So what exactly are they? So some courses require that you purchase online, kind of an online login to some sort of program that hooks up to your Brightspace, to your course material. So sometimes that's, as Michelle said, an online lab. Sometimes they do online quizzes or readings, stuff like that. And sometimes you need to purchase additional permissions for that. So that's separate from your textbook. If you wanted to buy the textbook secondhand, you would still need to buy the course code, because as Lillian mentioned, the course codes are one-time use. So you buy them, use them for your course, and you cannot sell them off to someone else. So just keep your eye out, and just so you kind of understand the difference there.
Yeah, for sure. And I will just kind of mention, you touched on like knowing your profs and what their attitudes towards textbooks are. That's super important. Now that I'm an upper year student, I've had some of the profs that I will have this semester already. So I kind of know what their attitude is towards the textbook. Otherwise, I would have done the same thing as Lillian said. I would have waited like a week or two, and I still do, just to see how much the prof is going to use the textbook, and if they do, to what extent, like what chapters and things like that.
Yeah. And also just Shax16 asking where you can find your books. So yes, yeah, you'll find them out from your prof. So the Dal bookstore directory, in my experience, is not always updated, and some profs don't list their textbooks in the directory. So also keep that in mind.
But you can kind of see a general kind of idea of what kind of textbooks you're looking at if you do the textbook search within the bookstore. So all you have to do, I believe, is plug in what term you're looking for. I think you can do both winter and fall. You can do just fall or just winter. So just fall would be kind of a good choice to do. and then whatever program. So like, for example, I would be in health sciences, so I would click health sciences, and if it's a health promotion specific program, I would pick health promotion, and it would take me to all the different courses that are being offered that year, and I would just click my course, and it would take me to what books I would need to buy.
And also just another reason to maybe wait until you see a situation before you buy your books is that once you buy your books from the bookstore, if they are new books, if there's any use on them, it becomes difficult to return them for full price. So you'll probably not be getting the full amount that you paid back if you're trying to return your books. So say you start off a class, you buy the textbook, turns out you don't really like the class that much, which definitely happens. It's happened to me, happens to a lot of students. I don't know if you guys have ever. Yeah, so it definitely happens, pretty common thing. If you have bought the textbook, took it off the packaging, and already started using it, at that point it would be, you wouldn't be able to return it for full price most likely. So sometimes it's good to wait until you actually see if you like your classes to settle on the books.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So that pretty much wraps up the information portion. So we thank you guys for listening. We hope that we helped you out. If you have any last questions from anything else we covered, so whether that's health insurance, banking, tuition, food, life in Halifax, transport, go ahead and ask them. And now we are going to move on to the most exciting part.
Always.
Giveaway. So our first question for that is, where can you get your bus pass?
So answer in the chat, first person gets a prize.
And what are you guys planning for today?
So where can you get your bus pass?
For this lovely Dal Tiger. And for this awesome t-shirt. So type in the chat.
Yes, it will be on your dark card, and we are asking the location where you can pick up your bus pass.
I mentioned it a little bit earlier.
We mentioned that there were some special dates for international students to go line up
At this particular place.
Dark card office.
Yay!
Yes, you got it.
Fantastic.
And our second question is, we have a student discount during the week for groceries, and which date is it?
Yeah, Lexi talked about this.
So there's one day where you can show your Dal card and get some % off at grocery stores.
Tuesday.
Tuesday,
Yes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
So you'll be able to pick up your prizes when you
Well, thank you for participating in our giveaway. We're glad that at least some of you were paying attention. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. We hope, again, that we were helpful. If you have any last questions, go ahead and ask them now.
Thanks for putting up with our audio issues. We apologize for that again.
And otherwise, our next and final video is going to be talking about student life. So that's going to be about courses, what your courses are like, what to look for when you're choosing your courses. We're going to have a special guest coming in, an academic advisor, who's going to talk more about that. So that's our next webinar on student life on July 28th at 9 a.m. ADT. So same time, and we really hope to see you there.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, you guys. It was great to see some people in the chat. I think we're good. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys.
What about tax and
tax? So for tax, there's what's known as HST and GST. I believe GST is 15%.
Yeah. So in Canada, our taxes are determined by province. So if you're traveling to other provinces of Canada, like the taxes are going to be different. In Nova Scotia, so if you're in Halifax or anywhere else in Nova Scotia, it's going to be 15% on most of your purchases. So some things are exempt, but that's like kind of details, and you'll find that out when you get here. But generally, it's 15%.
And it will show on the receipt that they give you. It will show you the HST and the GST.
And for groceries, like for the vegetables, meat, they're usually tax-free.
Really nice. Any other questions? Or are we good to go?
Yeah, so again, any more questions about food, about life in Halifax, how we get around, what we like to do, or on the financial stuff, we covered health insurance, banking, tuition, cell phones. So any types of questions like that. Tax returns. Okay.
I believe someone is already typing out a response to you. So they will get to you shortly.
That's a good question.
We usually keep for 15 to 20%. Depend on how do you like the service.
Yeah, so there's not really too much of a generally if I'm just going out to like a not super nice restaurant, which is usually where I'm going out, I tip about 10%.
Yeah.
So yeah, but usually it's about between like 10 and 20. If there's nothing, no one stopped. If they did really bad and you don't want to tip at all, that's also acceptable. So it's kind of your own discretion, but generally people tip between 10 and 20%. Yeah, and just another note on the tax returns. So what we mentioned earlier about the health plan, that's part of the reason you want to make sure you're hanging on to your documents. So that's important for health insurance. You do get a job, a part-time job or something like that. You also want to hang on to the documents for that. So that'll have to depend on where you're working, what you're doing, how much you're working. But yes, keep your documents. You may be able to get some tax returns with that.
Came here late with some of the fun things to do in Halifax. Well, we will keep this stream up so you can rewatch what we kind of talked about. But we basically talked about kind of day trips to do, walking around downtown. You'll find a lot of things to do. Even when the weather's gloomy, like my friends and I will go to what's known as the boardroom, and you pay like $5 and you get to play board games. So there are lots of kind of places like that where you can go, and you can go for walks and hikes. Do you guys want to add to that? Or?
Well, yeah, I'd say there's lots of like great sightseeing in Halifax. A lot of like local shops. That's kind of Halifax is kind of like very like it's got like that little old city kind of vibe. You know, you have some like family-owned businesses that have been around a long time, so it's like a great place to walk around. Like lots of old buildings to see, that kind of thing.
And lots of cool museums. There are a couple museums that have really some interesting expos to see. So.
Yep, and most of our museums have like a day that you can go for free. So check those out. I'm sure there's like one every day that you could see. So that's pretty great as well.
All right. And we'll see you guys on the 28th. So
I am ADT, July 28th.
Be there, be square.